Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Welcome to part 4 in a series of live streams where we take the Transfigured gems as soon as they come out and we're going to discuss them as a group, as a community, work out which ones are the great ones, work out which ones aren't the safest league starters. Thank you for the super chat, Amiga, and let's go. This time we have a couple dozen gems, so only 24. Some of the other groups have been bigger, but this was an unexpected second group on New Zealand Thursday. So let's go through all of these and work out what we want to discuss here and try to work out exactly where we want to go with each of these. Animate weapon of ranged arms. Animates a ranged weapon item or lingering blade to fight by your side. Cannot animate unidentified weapons. Will not animate weapons with 6 sockets. Cannot be used by traps or mines. Now the reason it doesn't animate weapons with 6 sockets is because that ends up just destroying loot that you might have actually wanted to loot. It's important to say that bows are a rarer drop and bows and wands for that matter, they're rarer drops than other bases are. Now it can't animate unidentified weapons, which means that this is going to be picking up the scoured items off the ground, but you can also drop bad things on the ground as well if you want, or you can drop a good item if you want to destroy it, but again, 6 sockets is a little bit of protection against that for two-handers, i.e. for bows. Now, this is something where I need to have a look at things. So animated lingering blades turn into bows. Minion attacks deal 126 to 184 additional fizz. Animate lingering blades deal only a smaller portion of that damage. So it's... Oh, hang on, no, they're treated as being a weapon. Sorry, let me correct that. Animated lingering blades are treated as being a bow that has 17 to 80 physical damage on it. Maximum 16 animated weapons, but they have 38% more attack speed, and they deal 38% more damage. I am honestly not sure what to say on this. This is one of those things that I think really needs to be tested in game. This, however, if people have seen my video on the Pyroclast mine of sabotage tech, this feels like something that's going to work really well in conjunction with it. So once you've got a whole bunch of these animate weapons organized, they're long range fighters and they're easily replaced, at least the bad ones are easily replaced by lingering blades. And so you can then just keep conjuring new ones. But whenever you get a bit of a break in the action, you can drop a whole bunch of the sabotage of the Pyroclast Mines of Sabotage down on the ground. Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage, I'll probably mention this a couple of times here because it's a gem that looks terrible. I did its own video on it, but it's all about that aura. That aura is tremendous. 37 to 56 fire damage to hits is approximately 30% of an anger aura, but this stacks without any realistic limit. There is a limit there. That limit is 12 anger auras, so you can stack a whole bunch of these together. So this is something that works really well with it because you're going to be getting a lot of hits, and when you've got a lot of hits, you're going to get a lot of extra bonus damage. Your minions are going to get a lot of extra bonus fire damage. If you're not interested in playing something as clunky as dropping Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage at the feet of your enemies, then your alternative is probably to play as a Guardian. I think this has potential as a Guardian because it's going to then cause you to get the Guardian auras will have a lot of uptime, and so you're going to get a huge amount of flat damage from those. So all the physical damage that these animate weapons have is going to be affected by Hatred. Hatred is actually going to be the worst of the auras. Wrath and Anger are both going to provide about 1/6 of the total damage that you would get from the Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage tech, but it's going to do it a lot less clunkily. It's going to do it as something that's automated into your normal gameplay. So a couple of options for that. I really don't know enough about minions in order to find out whether this is good, and the person that I would recommend asking for this, or perhaps wait until he releases a video, is streamer Gazzy TV. Gazzy TV is the sort of person who knows every nuance when it comes to minion builds, and if you ever want to find out how to build minions, he's an expert in it, and if this gem is busted, he'll be the one who will have an authoritative take on that. So definitely have a look at that there. Hey Sleeper, no rest for the wicked there. midnight, you got work tomorrow, and you've just tuned into what's probably going to be an hour and a half stream. We'll see how it goes. Also, for anyone that's joined late, you can rewind live streams on YouTube, and you can watch them at 175% speed until you catch up, which is something that's worth knowing, because a lot of people don't realise that. Animate weapon of self-reflection. So, animates a copy of your main hand melee weapon to fight by your side. Cannot be used by totems, traps, or mines. Okay, this is cool. This reminds me of, in the first batch of Transfigured gems, there is Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation. Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation grants is a small physical damage nova that is a point blank AoE. I think it's around you, so point blank AoE. But you can then get 580% of the dagger that you've got equipped added as additional spell damage. So this is really good if you've got a good weapon, or you're forced to use a dagger with it. With Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection, this is going to conjure a 15-second duration weapon only, but it's going to then fight by your side as a loyal minion. So this is pretty crazy here. This looks like it's something that is really, really good at high investment, but maybe not so good until that point. Note that you can only have 6 of them, but 6 is a lot. You're going to be investing a lot of time into recasting this, but you can animate really strong weapons with this. Someone in chat has mentioned Kingmaker as an option, and that definitely jumps out. Actually, Kingmaker seems amazing. If this allows you to use Kingmaker, to duplicate Kingmaker to fight with you, and the Kingmaker aura affects you and all your other minions, that is incredible. That's something we've got to test out there. The other question that's come up in chat is how this interacts with skills from your weapon. I don't know how that's going to work. I would assume that skills from your weapon probably don't work. When we say skills from your weapon, I'm not talking about skill gems that are socketed into the weapon. They definitely won't work. But I'm thinking about skills that the weapon might have as triggers. For example, if you were to use this to animate Cosprey's Malice, I don't think that Cosprey's Malice would know about the cold gems that are socketed inside your Cosprey's Malice, and therefore I don't think they're going to be triggering them, but at least that's something to play around with. There's a whole bunch of really weird things to play around with, but yeah, Ornitol's Embrace has come up in chat as a possibility as well. That's something that has a very powerful proc on it, a proc that's very good at clearing for you, and there's also Energy Blade has come up. I was thinking that just as it came up in chat as well. Energy Blade is potentially really good just as something that does a lot of damage. So, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff there. I'm not sure how it's going to work in relation to any triggers though, like the Essence Flame Burst mod, like the Spectral Wolves mod, all sorts of things like that. Lots of weird stuff going on with this. It's a cool gem, but I'm going to completely reserve judgment on how good this is for now. I'm just going to say that it's a really interesting idea. Definitely one that you might want to play around with. Okay, Armageddon Brand of Recall. This just screams Jung Rowan here. Like, Brand Recall hit-based builds is something that he popularized a couple of leagues ago, not so much as a build to play for the entire game, but as a very powerful way to level a Templar to maybe level 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, and also to take down the first 2 Voidstone bosses with. Very powerful build for that part of the game, but something that lacks very late game scaling options. Now, this creates a magical brand which can attach to a nearby enemy, periodically activates while attached, causing a fiery meteor to fall from the sky. The brand will detach if the enemy dies. Activates every 1.5 seconds, but this is modified by increases to your cast speed. Deals a massive amount of fire damage, like a monstrous amount. Base radius 2.4 meters, can be attached for a total of 5 seconds, detached for 6 seconds, and mostly deals damage to enemies that aren't branded. Okay, this is one where I need to look up some things about this. I need to look up how this exactly is working, and I need to research this and also research mechanics around brand recall. So, Brand Recall recalls your brands to you, detaching them from enemies and increasing attachment range until they reattach. Spends a portion of each recalled brand's cost in order to activate it. Now, this then increases cooldown recovery rate and spends some of the cost. Brands gain attachment range, but when they attach, I believe this actually goes off straight away, doesn't it? Oh, is this Sorry, yeah, let me just reread that because people are telling me in chat I've missed a line. So, 80% less damage with hits against the branded enemy. So, one way of using this is as an ignite build, and that deals really juicy ignites, like 300% ignite, but where other skills like Fireball have more than 300% damage for ignite, the thing that makes this so good is that it's something that should be really smooth. But on top of that, Brand Recall causes Armageddon Brand to activate. So I just need to quickly grab the exact interactions here. I believe that when you summon it, it then... I just want to check whether this is a Brand Recall factor as well. So it periodically causes it. Brand will reattach. There's nothing here that indicates that it is something that does cause the thing to go off immediately. So it doesn't seem like it's a part of the Armageddon Brand gem. So this feels like this is something that you can then summon it and it will activate immediately. But it activates before the attaches to an enemy, doesn't it? Is that my understanding? Yeah, definitely this works well with the curse that spawns enemy phantasms. So that curse is probably in line for a nerfing. Jung Rowan has been very public about his desire to see that nerf because his estimates are that he's going to be able to hit dot cap for Uber bosses within 10 hours of League start with it. So basically, his ability to kill Uber bosses will be gated by his ability to access them. By the time he first gets to Uber Searing Exarch, i.e. the first Searing Exarch invitation he gets that is not the quest one, he'll be able to do the fight. And granted, he has a lot of mechanical skill, but he's not going to need it if he's doing dot cap against Ubers. So that's going to be crazy, crazy, crazy. Anyway, this seems like it's really strong, but I need to just... I feel like this is one that I need to see it in action in order to judge it. But if it does what I think it does, which is that it Brand Recall activates all the brands before they reattach to enemies, then it's going to just do a lot of damage. Like it's going to make Brand Recall feel like you have just cast Discharge. That's going to be what it's going to feel like. Whether you ignite with it, whether you hit with it is another question. And of course, being a brand that has a huge amount of base damage, it's something that's really good as an ignite build as well. So the setup that Jung Rowan was talking about for dot DPS cap to Ubers without any gear at all is by using Poison Prolif as a Pathfinder and using multiple copies of the Cluster Jewel, that low tolerance Cluster Jewel, and using that to inflict first poisons on those enemies that then become really, really big as a result of that. Then when they die, they prolif the enemies you've spawned with that specific mark. When they die, they prolif their poisons onto the main boss that you're killing. So it means that you get all of the bonuses. Like you get something like realistically 1200% increased damage with poison. And it's pretty reliable too. It's something that you can keep going for a long time. And yeah, Jung Rowan does have video guides for Armor Brand Recall builds already. So this is designed with that in mind. I need to have a look at his build because I haven't... I actually had intended to play his build as it was and then didn't get around to it. So it's one of those things, it's like I want to know how this works. It looks kind of cool. And, okay, I don't believe Righteous Fire has got anything yet, but there is still more to come, probably. Armor Brand of Volatility activates once when attached, then is destroyed. This hits like a fireball. Whoa! This thing hits as hard as a fireball. Base radius of 2.8 meters is pretty big. That's a much bigger version of fireball. This feels like it's... This feels like it's a totally different take on the brand concept and something that could be quite good as an ignite build. This is totally different. This is going to be slower and clunkier and more powerful than Armor Brand Ignite, but it definitely does a lot here. This definitely is a strong gem if you're willing to put up with clunk. I'm not sure that this is a level of clunk that I'm okay with, but if you are, then this is definitely something really strong. Ball Lightning of Orbiting. Okay. Fires a single projectile which moves in a spiral while damaging each enemy in an area around it repeatedly with bolts of lightning. I need to compare this to the base number, but the key thing is that word spiral. So let's go Ball Lightning. Baseline Ball Lightning. What do you do numbers-wise? So 700 milliseconds and 60% damage, 5% crit. You are 600 milliseconds, 50% damage, 500% base crit. So pretty much a wash. You drink 19 mana and you drink 23. Again, that's roughly the same mana per second that's used. So there's a number of things that are going on there. And we have modifiers to number of projectiles don't apply to this skill. And base radius is 2.2 meters. Radius is a key stat on this. So what's the base radius on... Do we actually have... Like, have GGG given us that base radius on this? I think they probably have. It may be on the new version of Ball Lightning as a skill. So let's go here. Changes to existing gems can be found here. Ball Lightning. Base radius is 2 meters. Okay, so that's the new version of Ball Lightning. So 2 meters, this is a slightly wider hitting area. One of the key things is just going to be how long those spirals go for. Additionally, modifiers to number of projectiles don't apply to this skill. Really does limit this a fair bit. I am going to say that I am not impressed with this yet. It does have 100% more projectile speed, but that's a dubious stat on Ball Lightning. That means less damage when it's close. The additional radius is more damage, but I feel like this is going to clear better than base Ball Lightning, but it's just going to really... Like, it's still not going to be great, and I feel it's going to have all the reasons I don't like Spectral Helix as a skill to play, I think are going to be the case here. And maybe there'll be some use cases for it, though. So, you're talking about Corrupting Fever as a possibility here as well. Triggering this Ball Lightning seems interesting. Yeah, this could be something like... It's a pity that you can't double trigger gems. Like if you could have this as being if you could have this being Hex Touch and something, that could be pretty strong because it's just going to be around for a long time. You know where I do like this? If you have this as a cast when damage taken in conjunction with a recovery when you hit. So this could be a Watcher's Eye mod that on a Vitality Watcher's Eye mod that causes your character to gain life when you deal damage to when you hit an enemy. That would be an example of something that I feel would work quite well with a Ball Lightning of Orbiting, low level cast when damage taken setup. Doesn't really do a lot of damage. Area of Effect is an interesting one. I believe it shouldn't change the orbit, but I'm not sure I'm right on that. And if it doesn't change the orbit, then increasing the AoE on this is going to considerably increase both the amount of ground that it covers, so it's clear speed, but also its single target damage as well. Agree, this doesn't tell you how many rotations it does. As for using this with totems, I feel like Classic Ball Lightning is the way to go there, because one of the advantages for Classic Ball Lightning is just that it can hit things that are in awkward spots. Ashgar has a good point. You can Hex Touch Ball Lightning on a trigger as long as the trigger can't also apply the curse, but I think that's going to be pretty rare. Mjolnir is an interesting case here. This could actually be reasonably good with Mjolnir because you're already in close. So yeah, consider this to be, if you're playing something that is a melee attack build that is then able to use Mjolnir, that's the use case for this. Ball Lightning of Orbiting goes with Mjolnir. I think that's it. The single projectile low, like you're competing with just firing normal Ball Lightning but having more projectiles. I'm not sold. I think there's corner case uses for it. Probably the best use I can think of is that Vitality Watcher's Eye plus Mjolnir setup, so that you're gaining a lot of life when you do proc your Mjolnir there. Anyway, not one that I'm particularly sold with, but it is interesting. Ball Lightning is static. We saw video footage of this being used. Base radius 2.8. It is an orb, which means that, we've only seen 2 used. It's a cooldown time. 1.5 second cooldown on this. That's its limitation. You can place it wherever you want, and it creates a zone of death that enemies that go into take damage, and it damages each enemy in an area around it repeatedly. So this is going to pulse multiple times. This is basically, you conjure a zone on the ground that has a duration... What's the duration on this? Alright, am I clueless, or does this not have a duration on it? Because that seems like a big big thing to be missing on this. The duration seemed to be adequate but not long. So this one, like the basic damage is 90%. All it needs to do is hit 4 times, and the hit damage on this is strong. So that's 4 times per cast, and you've got good value out of your spell cast there. Except you're not going to shock very much with those small ones. It doesn't say its duration, which is the key. Quality is giving cooldown recovery rate. I agree with that. Yeah, I want to see this in practice, but I currently think it's not there. It does have a limit to the number you can have at once, but you also got the 3 uses anyway. The lack of duration tag is weird on this. Like the way it's worded, it lasts forever, and I don't think it's intended to last forever. That just doesn't feel like something that you would normally have. Or when you say forever, like that, I think Granny Gear Games, their usual limit is massively long. So you think it lasts 2 seconds based on the video demonstration, and that seemed to be on a fairly weak character, so 13 hits during that period. And that's from just looking at it frame by frame. So if that's the case, like, you don't even need 13 hits for this to do a lot of damage. But yeah, the description needs to tell you more than it does. The other thing that's significant is that this is hitting everything in the radius. Now, 2.8 meters is solid. It's not amazing, but it does hit a moderate chunk of the screen. I tell you where I think this would be absolutely phenomenal, and that would be if you were running Heist. This is the sort of thing you drop down when you're at a door. It has enough damage that even if your character is all about speed, you'll still have enough damage to kill all of the trash, including the magic monsters and the not very tanky rares, just with a few hits of this. But the uniques, it's going to take a while on. So it's a clunky skill, but does a few interesting things. And you know what? In a lot of ways, is this just a reskin of the new Void Sphere? Like, I'm probably going to annoy someone by saying this because people love the idea of Void Sphere, but this feels a lot like Void Sphere without the hinder and with a couple of other things. Yeah, you could stack multiple on a boss. That's a good... If you can stack multiples on a boss, that's nuts. And I can't see any reason that you can't do so either. So yeah, that actually could be a case where this is way better than I think it is. So that's Ball Lightning Ecstatic for you. Interesting. Void Sphere of... What's a new Void Sphere called? Void Sphere of Rending, but it's Ball Lightning of Static. Very similar there. Do keep in mind you're going to need to find this gem, and of course you're probably going to want a level 21 version, which is going to be non-trivial to get. Orbs... Yeah, Orb skills have a limit, but it seems to be 2 from the video that they showed of it. There is a limit on Void Sphere. They never had more than 2, but they did have 1. They did have 2 on the video that was shown. I might just look up the orb tag because it's come up a couple of times, and it's one of those things that's messy and yeah, confusing. So this tag applies to skills which have a periodic damage effect over an area, persist for a duration, are not targetable by enemies. Doesn't seem to have any particular rules associated with it. I might just check if there's anything here on orb. No. Add a new orb tag. Yeah, it doesn't mention anything there on the wiki, but I think it is the case. It's not a property of the tag. Yeah. If you were to attach this to a proxy, like a mine or a totem or the like, I think that would... sorry for bringing this up. It would still respect the cooldown limitation, assuming that you can't even use this with it. So they'll become cooldown totems or cooldown mines or cooldown traps. Nobby's asking, are we getting Transfigured support gems? And the answer to that is no. There will not be any of them. So it looks like this is a property, like the orb is just a gem tag that's used as a descriptive term, and then some of those orbs end up having that limitation. Okay, next we have Ethereal Knives of Lingering Blades. I think this might just be current day Ethereal Knives. So let's just compare that. Ethereal Knives, current day Ethereal Knives, 220%, this is 6% crit, proj speed 1300, 600 millisecond cast time. What are we looking at here? Oh yeah, that all looks familiar, doesn't it? Fires 10 projectiles, each projectile remains as a lingering blade. And okay, that's 9 to 12, so it's actually worse on the projectile front. Otherwise, it's basically this. Oh, hang on, no, this is new Ethereal Knives. Grr, where's the currently live version of Ethereal Knives? Where are we? So, yeah. Alright, so it looks like it's, it looks like the current version is actually very similar to this. Ethereal Knives of Lingering Blades is basically the current version. Note there's Ethereal Knives of the Massacre, which replicates the helmet enchant that causes it to be as a Nova instead, although not with the Nova tag, just Nova in the plain English meaning of the word, not in the precise PathOfExile terminology. And then this leaves a lot more blades as well, you're mentioning. So this fires 10 projectiles, each projectile remains as a lingering blade, whereas this was, you're saying this one was capped, wasn't it? 50. Yeah, that's right. It no longer has the limitation that you have to self-cast it in order to get full blades. So lots of stuff there that's interesting. But basically, I'm going to call this current day Ethereal Knives without the helmet enchant, and Ethereal Knives of the Massacre is Ethereal Knives with the helmet enchant and slightly slower casting speed. And then there's, yeah, the whole bunch of things set up. You know, Omar, the funny thing about the fandom wiki is that I sometimes genuinely use it if I want to research the history of PathOfExile. Not because it's got a good history of the game, but because it's got accurate information as it was when the game was in patch 3.12. Very, very accurate there. Hey Destroyer, yes, patch 4 is out. Unexpectedly came out Thursday evening, New Zealand time. So I was in the middle of eating. I was in the middle of organising dinner, and then, hey, people keep pinging me on Discord. Hey, you should check this out. Check this out. Check this out. And surprise, we got a second batch within about 9 hours of the third one. Exsanguinate of Transmission chains 21 times. This is cool. Fires tendrils at only one target, but then that bounces around for a long time. Now, this is going to be one of those things where propagation of damage through chains is going to have a real problem. You're going to sort of be bouncing around from monster to monster, but that bouncing is not instantaneous, even with a fast-moving skill like Exsanguinate. And I think that's going to be a real problem here that's going to make this feel weaker than it actually is. Let's bring up current day Exsanguinate for comparison. Exsanguinate. So we are 270% of base damage, 55% of base damage. Wait, what? Oh, but you've got lots of dot. Oh, 1121 base fizz per second, 1121 base fizz per second. So that's the same. Base duration 3.5, base duration 1 second. Okay, Exsanguinate of Transmission is a dot skill. This is a DOT skill with it entirely, and it is going to dot the whole screen, but it is going to do so at a delay. This is interesting. This is going to bounce around a lot. And are there any things in the game that scale up damage over time based upon the number of times something has chained? I'm going to check that on the wiki. So if we go to chain, we want to just look. Hopefully this is the mechanic chain. Yeah, the projectile behavior. What we're looking for here is anything that causes interactions that would be particularly uniquely good here. So this is just have the capacity to chain. That's all fine. We're looking for something else entirely. We are not looking for gains chains. We are looking for chains work in a particularly mysterious way. Oh, this is that horrible Horrible long line for Hungry Loop. I do hate the way that works, but anyways, it's there. Modifiers. So chaining range is all good, but not what we're after. Projectiles deal. It's only projectiles, and it's only hits and elements. I don't see anything. Gloomfang only cares that they have chained, so it's a binary thing. It's a yes or no on Gloomfang. It's not a how many times have I chained. There are a few things like quiver mods where there's additional damage, I think, for the number of times something is chained, but I don't see anything like that here. So I'm not sold. Peter, it is the Aldi. It's Aldi's cheap beer, basically. So let's just have a quick look. Just to answer Sergeant Cookie's question about Sidbereth and Siegebreaker, I'd need to read the wording, but the key thing is going to be, is it your minion dealing the damage, or is it something else dealing the damage? And if the answer is that the minion is dealing the damage, then that will be prevented. If it's something else dealing the damage, then that will be. But now, how does this interact with forking? I don't think there's any way to give forking behavior to a projectile that doesn't, or to a non-projectile that doesn't have it, Pedroloper. So I can't name anything. Correction, I can name one thing, but it's very not useful, and that's Snake Pit. So Snake Pit, oh, if I can actually type right. Well, it's not that I typed it wrong, it's that there's a click thing. So you can, oh no, even then that's projectiles only. Yeah, even that doesn't ruin what you're looking for. It just, yeah, it doesn't function at all. So the key thing here is that this is a dot skill. 3.5 seconds is a long time. 3.5 seconds is going to kill stuff, but chaining 21 times is going to take time as well. And so this is no joke to get to happen. It's going to take you some time for that all to come through. Fire Trap of Blasting. Oh, this sounds interesting. This really sounds like an interesting gem here. Got to have a quick look at this one, but here we've got something that is just all about that boom. Deals fire damage to surrounding enemies, and it deals it in one quick go. But there is a staggering amount of extra damage that you get based upon if the enemy is burning or not. This is a bad gem if the enemy is not burning. Now, the entire use case for this is Righteous Fire builds that have Ignite shenanigans going on. That's the main one that I can think of. Or potentially even, if you have a lot of screen coverage on Righteous Fire and you're willing to stand on enemies, then maybe you could use this with Ignite. So this does not inherently Ignite, but it's not unable to Ignite either. So what that means is that if you critically strike with this, then the enemy is going to be on fire. You don't need to be close to it with Righteous Fire active in order to keep it burning. This is the thing that is needed, I think, for Chieftain Righteous Fire to continue in a slightly different form to last league. I do think the cost is higher on this. And so this is, and 50% chance for trap to trigger an additional time is just 50% more hit damage. It's like, this is really, really looking strong here. Jens is asking how good Burning Arrow is as a league starter. I tried it a long time ago and I wasn't impressed with its starting capability. There's a new version of Burning Arrow that's really intriguing, but it's something that you need to thoroughly respec your build into. Your key issues if you league start Burning Arrow will be projecting damage. Like, you've got such a slow attack with it that it's going to feel bad a lot of the time. It's not undoable, and there are builds that are reasonably similar, but I would say that Explosive Arrow Ballista is probably the closest thing if you want to have fire-based arrows. If you're dead set on Burning Arrow, though, don't let me stop you. It's not unbelievably bad. You need to then figure out ways to make it work. It's not something I would suggest as a genuinely new player. So, anyways, this is something that is really... Fire Trap of Blasting is really something that is worth having a look at if you are playing an Ignite build like the one that if you're playing a Fire build like the one I did last league that had the capacity to Ignite and that was Righteous Fire, because then things are burning. This is just going to do so much damage, so much damage that it's going to go boom. So I think that this is going to Inquisitor is the salvation for Righteous Fire, but this is the I want to play Righteous Fire and I want to play it very different to how it's been done before. You play it with this as a chieftain. You ignite. You have your dot from your main dot from Righteous Fire, but you've also got an ignite from this. So yeah, really weird there. Frenzy of Onslaught. I had to just move that because I think my face is in the way. Frenzy of Onslaught. So this performs an attack that gives a character a frenzy charge if it hits. Frenzy charges increase your attack speed. Consume all frenzy charges when you hit an enemy while at maximum frenzy charges to gain Onslaught for 1 second per charge consumed. And that's 135% of attack damage, but 100% of attack speed. Let's bring up Frenzy, just to get a sense as to the numbers on this. So Frenzy is also 135%, but it's only 5% more damage and more attack speed per charge. So this is going to put you at an average of half your Frenzy charges, rather than averaging at maximum once you get settled. And I am really unsure about this. I feel like it's a bit worse overall. The reason I say that is that you're going to be on average at half your charges. You are going to have Onslaught, which is good, but it's also going to then it's going to make it less useful as a setup skill for other things. This is not a self buff. This is a main attack, but as a main attack, it's only hitting one target as well. So I am not solved on this. Just on the question that's come up about was Fire Trap nerfed here. So this version of Fire Trap is not necessarily suited to existing Fire Trap builds. I might just quickly bring up. I don't think Fire Trap got any major changes, did it? Yeah, Fire Trap has minor changes. Like, it's got extra trap trigger area, which is good. It's lost fire damage. Fire Trap has minor changes that are a net positive, but a tiny one. Fire Trap of Blasting is just a different skill. This is more like Explosive Trap. So I don't think that Frenzy of Onslaught has a place. It doesn't go as a Mana Forged Arrow setup the way that normal Frenzy does. It doesn't get used as something like you could go up to maximum charges, then you could go up to maximum -1, but I feel like the investment you're putting into that is quite considerable. And I just don't think that the overall package is there. Now, I would want this to have slightly higher numbers. If the 7% were 9%, if both 7s were 9%, I would be tempted to at least consider this. At 7 and 7, I think it's just too low. So that's my first thought. Ice Trap of Hollowness. Okay, throws a trap that throws a trap that creates a series of icy runic explosions in a circle around itself when triggered, dealing cold damage to all enemies caught in the blast. Trap lasts 2 seconds, deals a certain amount of damage, and then has a secondary radius. I need to check the numbers on normal Ice Trap. So, Ice Trap has base radius, secondary radius, tertiary radius. So this is 3 explosions, each 290%. And that is 1.8, 0.9, 0.6. And it's 15% to trigger again. Contrast that to 340%, and you only get the 2 explosions. 340, so that's 680 if both hit, versus 870. So it's, unless I'm missing something, I'm just checking all the other stats. 5%, cast time 1 second, but that's just really trap. 22 mana. What's the details here? 22 mana once. Yeah, that's basically all the same. And alright, my overall thoughts of Ice Trap of Hollowness. Losing out on that center means you don't need to be as accurate. Now, I'm saying accuracy not in terms of the player stat accuracy, but in terms of your mechanical skill as a player. This places less demands on your mechanical skill as a player. If your mechanical skill as a player is low, then Ice Trap of Hollowness is better than Ice Trap. But if your mechanical skill is medium, then regular Ice Trap will outperform this. Not on every throw, but overall. Base Ice Trap lasts 4 seconds, new one lasts 2 seconds. Yeah, so actually that makes this potentially different with Sunblast. So there's a number of things there. Frankard has an interesting point about the Frenzy of Onslaught there, that maybe it's got some real use in conjunction with just being your primary Onslaught setup. So you have Frenzy linked to Mana Forged Arrow, and this slowly drains your mana, but nothing unmanageable. In exchange for that mana drain, it's going to give you, on average, half your Frenzy charges, and also a very high degree of Onslaught. So that's a potential use there. So my feeling is that Ice Trap of Hollowness is less powerful at the things that you probably want Ice Trap to do, and as a result, I am not sold. I do not consider it to be a particularly... don't consider it to be a particularly great gem. That said, by all means try it out. I do think it's going to be good enough to kill bosses with. The other thing to note is that Ice Trap has had a pretty big nerf in this league, not from Ice Trap stats itself. They're the same, or basically the same, but from the loss of Heat Shiver. Heat Shiver was god tier on those Ice Trappers. Although, one thing that needs to be said, Ice Trap of Hollowness does do bigger freezes and bigger chills. So, on Ozfagazi's point about higher effective damage, even factoring that in, you're going to get 2 hits with this, whereas you can get 3 on the baseline. So that's the reason that that I think the damage ends up being in favour of the old version. Just getting those extra hits. Random placements of bursts, so let's have a quick look at that. So the... I don't think the bursts are random, are they? I think they're just concentric. Just 1, 2, 3. At least that's my reading of the gem. So all in all, I think that Ice Trap of Hollowness is the lower skill cap version, but it's unless you are playing while very distracted, you'll still hit with the inner part of regular Ice Trap often enough that I think it comes out ahead. Lacerate of Butchering. This seems to lose everything related to bleed that is on Lacerate. 60% attack speed, 154% of base damage, and then it has a whole bunch of added physical damage, a whole bunch of other mods on it, 88% more damage with bleeding potentially, and then let's just quickly get a look at how that changes with Lacerate of Butchering. 40% of base attack speed. Oh my god, that's slow. 310% of base attack damage. I just don't think this gets there, does it? I don't think that this is getting there. So, unless I'm missing something. And this 40% speed is just unbelievably slow. Sure, this is hitting... Oh, I mean, it's hitting twice, so that's 620% spread out over 2 hits. 2.8 meters. It has a much bigger radius too. So it's got some things going for it. Yeah, the reason it loses the physical tag on this is because there's flat fizz on Lacerate Classic, but there's no flat fizz on this. So and also bleed is something that gets at the physical tag. Now, on the questions about prices of these gems, let's tackle this before we jump onto the next Lacerate. The reason that I think these gems, we can't predict their prices yet, and that's because there are 2 different crafts you can get in the Labyrinth that are going to create these. At least 2 that we know about. One is sacrifice a red gem and receive back in exchange a red Transfigured gem. So that's going to often create ones that you don't personally want. Those gems that come from that are going to be cheap. The second one is sacrifice a gem, get back a gem that is the same base gem, and that is Transfigured. So you put in Lacerate, you're not guaranteed to get Lacerate of Butchering, you might get Lacerate of Hemorrhage instead, but you will get a Lacerate gem. So, we don't know how rare that second craft is. I'm working under the assumption that it is an uncommon reward from the Eternal Labyrinth, a rare reward from the lower labyrinths, and a common reward from the level 83 labs, but I don't know that I'm right. The other thing is, people are going to want to try and push their gems to level 21 often as well. So there's a whole bunch of things there that are worth looking at. So yeah, Lacerate of Butchering, I am unconvinced, but I am also not convinced that this is trash. I feel like this is going to be very, very slow. And if you want full memes, you would use this with that Ulna Tolax, which will then take a year and a half to complete a single swing. But there's a lot of damage on it. You know, hitting twice with 310% base damage. I do think that a bit's going to come down to just how big that area feels. But also, I am very much not sold. Very much not sold on this. There is also a third craft, apparently, which is just straight random. Sacrifice a gem and get something there. Siddharth, I'll have another look at them soon. I think there was a couple of things in there. Let's have a quick look here. Elias is asking the thing that I'm not sure about with Kingmaker. That's going to be one to ask GGG about, but I don't think they've answered my batch of questions today. General's Cry has been good for a long time too. General's Cry is really crazy. Other things that bypass attack speed is a good question that's being asked. So weapon mines do, but not for melee weapons. That's something that I have used in the past. But I'm just trying to think if there's anything that does directly. The gem is great for trying to make the slower Sleep Slam character. Oh, that's the Ulna Tolax. Lacerate of Hemorrhage. So let's have a look at this. So this is monstrously more damage with bleeding. Monstrously more. This must be a one-hander. And it's 100... Like, it's a lot of flat fears. It's then got massive added damage with... Oh, sorry, more damage with bleeding. But it's 120% base. So 120 times 2.7. This is going to do, like... what's that? That's 324% of base damage with bleeding. This is 154 plus 88%. So not all that different. 60% of base attack speed, 80% base attack speed, so it's faster. And it's got that huge physical against bleeding versus this one, which is unconditional physical, but also has a bleed chance. Alright, so this is sacrificing the stance interactions, and it is sacrificing the benefits of... sacrificing performance against non-bleeding enemies in order to go all in on your damage against bleeding enemies. That's what Lacerate of Butchering is doing. Lacerate of Hemorrhage is doing. It's miles better if the enemy is bleeding. Now, one thing that's important to note, this can't be used with any of the things that really scale off Flat Fizz the most. It can't be used with Pillar of the Cage God, Void Forge, or... what's the name of those gloves? Facebreaker. So... none of those are an option. And yeah, this definitely does sound like it is a skill that is designed around the Crimson Dance Gladiator, because you can build up 8 attacks in a way that's a bit harder with base Lacerate. I mean, you can definitely get 8 attacks on them, but this will let you do so faster. I feel like this is definitely an upgrade if you want to play Bleed. And if you want to force Bleed, actually, this is the way to go. This and a Gladiator will do. It will be good enough, but it won't be great, I think. Does not needing Blood and Sand do anything for those builds? It just gives you a bit more flexibility, I think. Again, it's just a lot more flexible in base Lacerate, which is very much, you've got to play the game this specific way. It really was around the extremely hardline interpretation of the Gladiator theme when they put it in. It's like, right, this is what a Gladiator does. They play around with sand, they spill blood on it, and then that's where Blood and Sand came in. So, this is a pretty solid setup here. Ben was talking about Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma as by far the best bleed melee skill in the game. Well, that is something. I mean, his attitude will definitely be worthwhile thinking seriously about. It does hit hard. Yeah, I can see that. So you're saying you want to try and balance it to sit on 9, do you? Here, I was thinking of that skill as being like you you oscillate. You go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But yeah, if you can perfect it and never hit the 10th stack, that's better. Anyways, Lacerate of Hemorrhage is an interesting one. This feels like just a big upgrade over base Lacerate if you meet the conditions necessary. Okay, let's jump to Lightning Trap of Sparking next. Damage on this looks really big, 285%. This is not a cooldown trap because I've fallen for that before. Throws a trap that launches projectiles through the enemy that set it off, dealing lightning damage to them and subsequent targets. Projectiles can chain when colliding with terrain, pierce all targets. Wow, this is weird. Trap lasts 4 seconds, fires 5 projectiles, chains twice, but because projectiles always pierce and pierce dominates chain, this means it can bounce off 2 walls, but it's not bouncing off enemies. The numbers on this feel really good. Hey, Lightning Trap. What's the base numbers on Lightning Trap? Lightning Trap. Lightning Trap, Lightning Trap. So we have 240%. Okay, they're already pretty high. 6% crit and 20 mana. Mana on this skill is brutal, brutal, brutal. So we have, we do keep the critical strike chance bonus. Only 5 projectiles, a little bit more damage. And we have this weird behavior. So what's the behavior on Lightning Trap proper with projectiles? It's just 9 in a circle. And Lightning Trap of Sparking fires them at enemies. It fires 5, but it fires them at enemies. They pierce them, they hit walls, and then they bounce off and hit terrain. So this is intriguing here. This is like, yeah, this works in cramped layouts, I think. I think that's definitely something that you can... This feels like something that you can definitely make work in cramped terrain. Like if you wanted to clear... If you wanted to farm, say... What's a good example of a map for this? Bone Crypt. If you wanted to farm Bone Crypt for some weird reason, maybe one of the new div cards goes there, then this is going to work pretty well with it. This looks like an inherently pretty strong gem, but it also does things that I'm not that sure you want to do. I mean, it fires 5 projectiles that are pointed at enemies, which is probably a bit of an upgrade from Lightning Trap. Maybe it's just an upgrade from Lightning Trap, really. It will do more damage than Lightning Trap does, yeah. So, yeah, maybe I think it's just an upgrade on Lightning Trap. It's not a strict upgrade, but it does feel like an upgrade there. Unless, oh, hang on. Launches projectiles that set it off, dealing lightning damage to them. And are they projectiles behaving weirdly? I don't think they are. They're just bouncing off 2 walls. Frost Wall doesn't work anymore. Your projectiles always pierce your Frost Wall. Reeve of Refraction. This is one of the alternate quality gems coming back. 250% base damage isn't half bad. But this is the one that converts 100% of your damage to a random element. No one was playing Reeve for a while, so let's just have a quick reminder of the stats on it. 250% base is the stats. 4 maximum stages and 50% more AoE per stage versus 50% more. Yeah, it's basically is just the same, except it's got that conversion element on it. So this Reeve of Refraction is something that was an alternate quality. That alternate quality wasn't used. I wish this was good. But I just don't think it is. It's Reeve. And also the other thing is that Reeve is reliant upon you using Reeve. One of the advantages of converting the damage away from physical is that you can run physical immune maps, but your Reeve on a Reeve of Refraction gem, if you can corrupt that into Reeve, the Reeve version won't have that conversion, and as a result, you will die to your own physical reflect if you've got any appreciable amount of physical damage on the character. So this one's weird, and I just don't think it gets there. There was a time when this would have been exciting, but at that time, Reeve had much lower numbers and was exciting. So let's have a quick look at the Seismic Trap of Swells. Okay, this is cooldown time of 750 milliseconds with 6 uses. So this is little baby Seismic Traps. And it has 240% effectiveness of added damage. Releases a number of waves. Each one deals damage in a series of small bursts in a line, ending in a larger burst. Okay, I don't think that we can judge this yet. I don't think we can say much about this at all until we see... Oh, hang on, no, it says the same thing here. So, alright, what's the key differences here? So, base duration 3.5 seconds. Doesn't have... A trap lasts 4 seconds. Releases 4 waves instantaneously. So, 4 waves ever. Versus Seismic Trap is dealing... it is going to be... Like, it is 4 waves normally, but 4 waves base, but you can definitely scale it up. Oh, sorry, they'll raise 6 waves at a time, so it's... I'm trying to work this one out. It's, Is this worded differently? Releases a number of waves. Each deals damage in a series of small bursts in a line, ending in a larger burst. Throws a trap which, once triggered, repeatedly releases... okay, so it's multiple releases, yeah. Okay, so the difference is that Seismic Trap of Swells is just a Seismic Trap that cuts off really quickly. That, I think, is the difference on it. So, you drop a bunch of these down. You drop all 6 of them down. They detonate, but they don't persist on the battlefield for several seconds. And what that's going to mean is that Seismic Trap of Swells is not going to scale with duration, the way that you would probably be scaling duration on a Seismic Trap build. So, it's kind of different. The base damage numbers on it are really high. So, if you can get a few hits with it, I just need to see this in game to say anything about it. The damage numbers look so good that this feels like it's an incredibly strong skill. But it might not get there because it might just end up being too clunky. Spectral Throw of Materializing. Projectiles that appear deal 10% more damage. So throws a spectral copy of your weapon, flies out, returns to you in a spinning attack that only damages enemies while returning. That's cool. That is like a really cool setup. I think it's probably terrible, but 125% of base damage for 110% attack speed. 110%, yeah, it's... I mean, this hits harder individually, which matters for Ignite if you are wanting to Ignite with a Spectral Throw, but then you've got a double delay because you've got to wait for the projectile to reach maximum distance, then return to you. I'm just really unsold on this. Does it also have maximum pierce? Like, Spectral Throw here doesn't... okay, so it does maximum pierce, so it doesn't say that there. So yeah, only damages enemies while returning. I just don't think this gets there, do you? I feel like against bosses, there are times this will be good, but those times against a boss that is hard enough to justify doing extra damage, you probably have less control over whether you stay in one place for as long. So Batella is asking exactly what effectiveness of added damage with spells means. Let's go through this quickly. So if you imagine that you've got a dagger that reads that has the text on it in part, your spells deal 100 extra fire damage. If you were to use that with Seismic Trap of Swells, that would instead be 240 added fire damage. Almost always on gems, there are exceptions, but almost always, effectiveness of added damage linearly correlates with the amount of damage that they do. And that appears to be the case with Seismic Trap of Swells. For example, Wave of Conviction deals 330% base damage, so effectiveness of added damage is 330%. And that means that Wave of Conviction will deal very, very close to 40% more damage than Seismic Trap of Swells. Obviously, they have different mechanics of how they apply that, but... Oh, sorry, just the hiccups there. But that is the way that tends to work. What is guaranteed, though, is that if your dagger says plus 100 fire damage to spells, then instead it will add 240 because Seismic Trap of Swells is designed, it's balanced around hitting less often. You also have the same thing that applies with attacks as well. So you can have effectiveness of added damage on an attack And that's almost always tied to the percentage of base attack damage that your skill does. So I'm of the opinion that Spectral Throw of Materializing is a cool meme, but don't line up for a Mathil build guide around Spectral Throw yet, because as much as a Mathil build for it would be fun, I don't think there's a power in this gem for it to justify playing it. Stormbind of Indecision creates a magical brand which can attach to a nearby enemy, periodically activates while attached, firing a beam which deals damage to the branded enemy and those around it. Brand will detach if the enemy dies. Now, 20% more damage with hits against branded enemy, sends a beam to the branded enemy, and then I think everything else is about the same. If I could actually type Stormbind. So we have here 30% of base damage, activates every 0.5 seconds while attached. 0.4 seconds and 85%, so it's much, much, much higher. Okay, what else have we got? 5 seconds, 6 seconds, send beams to 4 enemies instead of just sending beams to the branded enemy, and 130% more to the branded enemy. So this is 20% more to the branded enemy, and okay, so this hits 1/5 as many targets. That's why it deals so much, such different damage. Stormbind of Indecision is dealing 102% of base damage to the branded enemy, and Stormbind Classic is dealing 69%, which is nice. So that's the difference. Stormbind Classic hits more targets but only tickles them, whereas Stormbind of Indecision hits its main target harder. You could say actually that Stormbind of Indecision is actually more decisive. It also is jumping around, isn't it? It periodically activates when attached. Attaches to a new enemy after activating, no more than... Okay, that's the other key thing as well. So it has the jumping brand mastery built in. That's actually really cool. So it hits the target it's on really hard, then it goes and hits someone else instead. This is a cool idea. Is there any way to cheaply give this more chains? Because it should chain. Beam sent to the branded enemy, then needs to chain to something else. That's the key thing it's missing. Because at the moment, I feel like the weakness of Stormbind of Indecision is its inability to hit more targets. If you can get this chaining a bit more, there's a few ways to do that, then that's when it starts becoming good. Because +1 chain on this is doubling the amount of damage it does. I feel like this is not an upgrade the way people are saying in chat that it is, because it misses out on hitting multiple extra targets. But if you make this chain, then suddenly it becomes good. It can chain because it's got the chaining tag, but doing so at a low opportunity cost is difficult. You could use Awaken chain support, and that will get the extra hit. I believe the lightning mastery for +1 chain has been removed. And so those shenanigans aren't going to work, but you can still get a whole bunch of other things there. So quality could well be, quality on this could be more damage to branded enemy. There's an interesting idea that's come up in chat here, is just swapping this in for a single boss fight. So if you're fighting against a boss where there's only one boss, yes, this is definitely an upgrade over Stormbind proper. And maybe that's the way it ends up being used. Questions come up about would tinctures work with Spectral Shield Throw, and I believe the answer to be no. I don't believe that to be a weapon attack. Hits targets... Oh, firing a beam which deals damage to the branded enemy and those around it. Is that the case on Stormbind proper? Yeah, it is also on Stormbind proper. Okay, so that's another factor. It does have some clear built in as well. The radius is the key thing, and Ashgar's just saying the same thing in chat. The radius is the thing that we don't know, and that's going to be the difference between this being glorious and this being a glorious disaster. If that radius is terrible, then this gem is DOA, except maybe as a swap-in on a Stormbind build for single target boss fights. If that radius is very generous, then normal Stormbind is probably DOA. And so without knowing that, I don't think we can judge this. New Found Mark is definitely, something you could use this with. It's a cool idea. everything about it is a cool idea, and it does smooth out the clear when it activates and then attaches somewhere else. Okay, Stormbind of teleportation, Rune Blast of teleportation. People have been talking about this one a bit. So, channels spread runes on the ground in a growing pattern. The runes fade away after a duration or get immediately removed and deal damage in a circular area when detonated by Rune Blast. Enemies standing on the runes are hindered, reducing their movement speed. Channel to improve the runes that have been placed by Stormbind based upon the mana you spend channeling this skill. Release to detonate the rune, which will cause other runes to detonate in a chain reaction and can teleport you to the targeted rune. Let's just get some numbers on this and compare it to the normal Stormbind gem. I can just type Stormbind. So here we have 160%, 120 milliseconds, 6% crit, and we have all the same. 12 seconds, 50% move speed, 40% AoE per improvement. 12 seconds, 50% move speed, 40%, yeah, 100% more damage per time they've been improved. Improved for every 24. Runes can be improved 3 times. And this is all basically the same. Rune Blast teleportation is... So, 10% cast speed as well. Yeah, so it's just 10% cast speed versus you teleport to the area if you have not detonated runes in the past 1 second. So, that is basically just Stormbind again. Stormbind has some weird mechanics around it where you actually sometimes don't want to raise its gem level. If you've got a whole bunch of external added damage, for example, from anything that's got effectiveness of added damage, like anything that boosts effectiveness of added damage, particularly if you're using this in conjunction with the Pyroclast Mine tech, so Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage is down already, then you might actually want to use level 1 Stormbind so that you can then improve your runes faster, spending less mana. You then juice it up, juice it up, juice it up, fire off Rune Blast or Rune Blast of teleportation. I think that's got some potential, but I don't know that I'd use the new version of it or the existing one. So yeah, this is a... people mention an interesting thing that if you do want to juice up the level of this, it does have the movement tag on it now. So this could be in Bronze Live, and that's going to do a lot of damage potentially. Travel tag is really big. Stormbind is something I don't recommend you league start unless you know you like it, because it's a really crazy gem. It requires a lot of research to get it to work right. It's not a playstyle many people find fun, but the people who do swear... But while there are some people who swear at it, there are people who swear by it as well. The key thing is just know that there is the possibility that you may want this to remain level 1 gem, because the level 1 gem trick is really strong on this. And that means you do not want to be using Bronze Live. You want to be keeping it at gem level 1 so that the mana cost is low, and then you can improve your runes for a minimal amount of mana, and then you can set off your Rune Blast really effectively alongside all of those shenanigans with Pyroclast Mines of Sabotage, and get all your flat damage from them, and then you actually are a fire damage caster. So this is like a Giga Clunk build that is probably capable of truly deleting bosses. Truly deleting bosses, while not being a good build in the rest of the game. Level 30 is easy for this gem if you want that now, but that's going to mess up all of your... that is going to really mess up a lot of your mana as well. Hey, Volatile, thank you for becoming a channel member. Legend. It's not so much the mana per cast, it's the amount of mana that needs to be invested to upgrade each rune. Because you're going to want to upgrade runes a lot of times, so you need to invest hundreds of mana at gem level 20, whereas at level 24 there, I think that 24 number on it is much lower. So Stormbind, let's just bring that up. So Stormbind is 5 at gem level 1, and I think it just keeps going up linearly, doesn't it? Yeah, so you start needing to spend like many hundreds of mana, whereas at gem level 1 you don't. And if you're getting your damage from external flat damage, then there's nothing that incentivizes you to go higher. Yeah, Arcane Cloak is another good example that Vanillin is raising there, except that charges the runes instantly. Oh yeah, that's a And Arcane Cloak also provides you with flat damage as well if you're mana based. So there's a number of things to learn about this skill. I'm not an expert in this, but there's some really, really weird shenanigans that you can do with it. Very clunky build, very weird, but play around with it because it does do some interesting things. Summon Chaos Golem of Hordes. So this is one of the Chaos Golems that eschews the aura in exchange for just being a better combat minion. And then we have Summon Flame Golem of Hordes. I do like the Summon Flame Golem of Meteors though, just for the memes. Ice Golem of Shattering. So this is one that uses an Icicle Barrage spell and a chilling spinning attack in addition to its melee attack. If reduced to low life, it will trigger a spell that destroys itself to deal area damage and fire icy projectiles in a circle. This really just comes down to the numbers on this. Really comes down to the numbers on it because this is a combat minion. It doesn't serve the purposes that golems have served historically, but most people don't really care about the purposes golems have served in the past, and we just need numbers on this. Yeah, I think the thing with Indigon is the Arcane Cloak shenanigans there. Like Arcane Cloak then turbocharges Indigon. You're definitely using Indigon on that. Yeah, like this, all these golem skills sound at least interesting to try if you're willing. Like, these are just new minion builds, basically. And again, I'm with Siddharth on this. Yay for more minion skills with no numbers on the gems. Mentioning a lot of mana. If you're talking about a lot of mana on the golems, I think golems are always expensive, aren't they? Let's just go, like, classic Flame Golem. Yeah, classic Flame Golem's 54. They're not changed. I mean, summoning 3 of them is going to take longer, and it's going to take more mana, but the individual cost is the same. Golems have always been expensive. You can't use them if you Giga Starve yourself on unreserved mana. Batella is asking, can you migrate from a private league to a challenge league? Yes, you can, but the parent league of the private league is going to matter. So if the private league is set up to be Affliction Solo Self-Found, and it has the Affliction, Softcore, Non-Ruthless, and Solo Self-Found rule sets in play, then you would migrate out of that into Affliction, Softcore, Solo Self-Found. So there's a whole bunch. You can migrate there. You can't migrate, for example, from Hardcore Affliction Private League to Softcore Affliction. Only from Hardcore Private League to Hardcore. Yeah, all of these Golem transmutes are absolutely for combat minion use. They don't really have much other use, or sometimes for their additional effects, like the Flame Golem of Meteors might end up just being a fire damage skill, but we don't have the stats on that yet. Generally speaking, though, they are something that is solely for that use. They're basically just a combat minion build. The other thing you can possibly do is mix and match them too. Like, there might be one of the baseline golem effects that you want to use because that's just essential for your character's survivability, but then you might take all of the alternate quality combat, or alternate quality, all the transfigured combat ones. Volatile Dead of Confinement. I really need to look up Volatile Death's base stats because it's been a long time since I've played with this gem. So we are 800 milliseconds, 170% base damage, consumes corpses up to 3. What do we hear? Consumes up to 3 corpses. It seems to be 800 milliseconds, it's more damage there instead. And then explosion deals damage equal to 4% of the corpse's life versus explosion deals fire damage 4%. Radius 3.1, 1.5, and 60 orbs. And so we have this orb movement speed is the key difference on the baseline version, and base radius of 3.1, which is going to be the explosion that's dealt. Okay, so base duration is 1.5 seconds. What's the base duration on this? Doesn't seem to have one. So Volatile Dead of Confinement is going to miss a bit. That is the key. Oh, hang on. Creates an orbs with... Ah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, this doesn't move. That's cool. Volatile Dead is something that is just basically... Like, this is just basically making it detonate dead, isn't it? It's like delayed detonate dead. It's a very different gem, but it's just very different, hey. On the question of league starting Bone Shatter Slayer versus Ignite Wave of Conviction, I'd say both of them will work. Ignite Wave of Conviction will have more trouble with the milestone bosses, but will probably be faster in mapping. You're going to want to have something that proliferate. I would ultimately say, Durdude, that you should go with whichever of them ends up with you on a class you want to play more later, because they both work. So this is, yeah, basically this is a variant on Detonate Dead. It's Detonate Dead with a delay and slightly better numbers, I think people are saying in chat. So that's essentially more of a Detonate Dead variant than a Volatile Dead variant, I think. Anyways, let's have a look at the other one. Volatile Dead of Seething. And something that is totally different here. Yeah, 3.1 is pretty big, so it is going to hit a big area. Corpses near the targeted location explode, dealing damage in a small area, and creating an orb which moves towards nearby enemies before dealing spell damage in a larger area. Explosion of the corpse is not affected by modifiers as spell damage, and cannot be reflected. Base stats seem pretty similar to the base gem, and consumes up to 10 corpses. Explosion deals damage based on fire life, 40% increased movement speed. What's the key difference here? Volatile Dead. 170% to 170%, so no change there in damage. 2 meters, 1.5 meters, 40% move speed. 2 meters, 1.5 meters, 40% move speed. I'm missing something here. Consumes up to 10 corpses, consumes up to 3 corpses. Let's just look at the overall topography of it. I'm definitely missing something because one of these is... Oh, maximum of 10 orbs. Okay, that makes sense. So basically you don't want to recast this. It's 26 mana. How's the mana looking on Volatile Dead? 26 as well. So that's the key difference. You aren't able to preload as much. In exchange for not being able to preload, then you don't need to spend as many actions casting spells. I feel like the regular Volatile Dead probably comes out ahead in bossing, and Volatile Dead of Seething is definitely better for clear. Like, this is going to really, really, really clear well, I think. Because 10 is enough for clearing. When you're trying to kill a boss, you're going to want to do more damage. But I think that this is looking fairly solid. Just answering the question in chat about when do I think there'll be more gems, I think there will be a 5th lot. I feel like there will be. I don't have any foreknowledge of that, but I feel like there's going to be another one. I think the base radius is still the same, isn't it? Base radius 2 meters, explosion radius 1.5, 2 meters 1.5, yeah. The only difference is just that you're conjuring 10 at a time towards a cap of 10 versus 3 at a time towards a cap of 60. So I just feel they're just different to each other, and this just does something that's yeah. You self-cast with this. You self-cast with this, and it will do the job well. So people are saying maybe there'll be a 5th lot and a 6th lot as well. I do think there's space still to come out. There's still gems that people want to see that haven't been seen here. All right, let's quickly go through some of the, like, a quick recap of everything. Animate Weapon of Ranged Arms. Ask Gazzy if it's any good. My initial feeling is that this has some potential, but I'm just not convinced as yet. Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection. This copying your weapon is going to do some crazy things, and I really feel like making a copy of Kingmaker could be very good here, as well as a whole bunch of other things you can do with it. So yeah, I think that this has a bunch of things that are going for it that could be very solid, and it's going to be clunky to use, but if you've got the right weapon, it'll really have you back. Just having a quick look if there's anything else in the way of comments that are coming up here. Okay, Armor Brand of Recall. This is the one that does a bunch of extra damage when you use Recall and doesn't work very well otherwise. So basically, you just want to be using this with Brand Recall. Armor Brand of Volatility is only one use, and I feel like this is probably too clunky to justify, but by all means, prove me wrong. It could be fun. Ball Lightning of Orbiting. This is Spectral Helix's problems, and not necessarily the incredible numbers Spectral Helix used to have. Got to test this out though. There's so much we can't tell because we don't know the pathing that it follows. Ball Lightning of Static. The numbers on this look good. The numbers on this look really good. I'm not sure that it's great, but the thing looks really solid. Now we have Ethereal Knives of Lingering Blades is classic EK. Exsanguinate of Transmission is all about that dot. Now someone mentioned the prospect of using this with decay support. I am not sold. Effectiveness of added damage is 55%. I'm just not sold on this with that. This is just something that you want to cast this in big packs if you've got the physical dot stats in order to kill with it. You probably don't want to use this in conjunction with traps or any sort of proxy setup. You want to be self-casting this, cast it 3 times, and hit lots of stuff. Very little hit damage, but I don't think you care about that. It's all about just chaining it around and killing stuff that way. Fire Trap of Blasting. This is an entirely different skill. Instead of lobbing a Molotov cocktail, this is lobbing a fragmentation grenade. This is going to do a single burst of massive, massive damage, whereas Fire Trap is about putting damage on the ground. But I think the key use case for this is going to be on a Chieftain Righteous Fire build, where this is then going to ignite. You already want the ignite shenanigans because you're playing with Hinekora. Frenzy of Onslaught, not sold on this. It is an option for using it with Maniforged Arrows in order to guarantee mostly full uptime on Onslaught and reasonable uptime on Frenzy charges, but it's competing with just having full uptime on maximum Frenzy charges, which is a big cost. Ice Trap of Hollowness. This has one less explosion than real Ice Trap, but each one hits harder. I don't think the trade-off is worth it, but there will be use cases for it. Lacerate of Butchering. This is all about those hits. This is just totally different, and this is a simplification of the Lacerate skill. Must be a two-hander, I think. Yeah, this one must be a two-hander, and this is like a Giga Slam. This is an ultra-slow hit that hits twice, which is partly there because otherwise it could be ridiculous with bleed. It hits twice, and it's just doing monstrous amounts of damage, but it has all the drawbacks of being a slam without any of the advantages of being a slam. This here is Lacerate of Hemorrhage. This is the bleed skill. If you want to play Gladiator Bleed, then please, please, please research Lacerate of Hemorrhage, because it's just got numbers. It really has the numbers you want to see on this. This is going to be something that if you want to play Melee Bleed, you should be doing it this league. You should be getting this gem, and you should be doing it as a Gladiator. Lightning Trap of Sparking. This is one that probably is an upgrade over baseline Lightning Trap. Not a strict upgrade, but probably projects damage better, and also has more damage as well. So this is probably something Lightning Trappers are looking for. The fact that it can only chain when colliding with terrain is important, because the projectiles piercing all targets doesn't actually allow them to chain off enemies. Reeve of Refraction is just taking an existing alternate quality. It's not an quality no one uses, and as a result, it's going to continue to be unused. Seismic Trap of Swells. Can't judge this until I see its damage application in-game. It looks interesting, it looks promising, but it could be bad, it could be explosively good. We're going to have to find that out in-game. Spectral Throw of Materializing. So this one here is one of those goofball skills, Spectral Throw of Materializing, where it only deals damage on the way back. And I am going to say that I don't see this being useful. I think that it's just too restrictive. There's too much of a delay between you issuing the attack and the monster taking damage for me to be happy with this. Stormbind of Indecision is next. So this took a while to parse. It hits the branded enemy and nearby enemies, and it does so harder than baseline Stormbrand, but it doesn't bounce around as much as Stormbrand does. For that reason, it then also bounces to other enemies after dealing damage. This is one that numerically looks maybe slightly better than base Stormbrand, but needs to be tried out. Stormbind of Teleportation is an extremely complex skill. This is just Stormbind, except that it teleports you. It's just that Stormbind has always been a complex skill. The teleporting is probably upside, and you probably want to use this in conjunction with the tech I outlined in the other video about the Pyroclast Mine of Sabotage. Summon Chaos Golem of Hordes and Flame Golem of Hordes. These are for a build that may or may not have enough support to work. These are designed for a build that is using golems as combat minions. Ice Golem of Shattering is similar, but is very different. It's not of Hordes. It's only one golem, but when it is dying, when it reduces to low life, it's going to do something significant. We don't know any of the stats of this gem. We can't judge it. Volatile Dead of Confinement is the one that causes that deals more damage, but causes the functions it has less quality of life than the base gem. And Volatile Dead of Seething is probably better for self-cast than Volatile Dead is generally, but considerably worse if triggered it. So you're mentioning there, Siddharth is mentioning that Lightning Trap of Spark, that it's something kind of different to what I thought there. So Lightning Trap of Sparking, projectile. It is still about projectiles. The projectiles are still going to have their limits as to how far they can go, and so the projectiles, yeah, it is going to be just Lightning Trap, except they bounce off walls. That's my expectations there. So my thought here on these gems, there is nothing that really jumps out at me in batch 4. The ones that I think were the most interesting, there was the ones that have jumped out to me, and this may not be a complete list. Possibly Blink Arrow or Prismatic Clones. That's going to come down to exact mechanics on how much damage they do. Secondly is the Consecrated Path of Endurance. That one was really, really interesting. I like that gem a lot. I really, really like that gem a lot. Next we had, from that first batch, there was some other stuff. Second batch, Lightning Conduit of the Heavens. This is something for totems. Also, the Flame Blast of Celerity. Seems like it could be very good with spell totems. So there's a couple of options. Hex Blast of Havoc is, I think, the thing I'm most excited about, maybe. And then there's a whole bunch of other things as well. In terms of a consolidated list, I have been, in the video number 2 and video number 3, I put some thoughts on each of them. I haven't actually been typing up notes during this one, so I probably need to come back with some stuff. But at the moment, I want to prioritize getting a guide together, doing my builds overview guide. That's going to be the one that needs the most thought on it. Anyways, I am going to call it at this point because it has been an absolute marathon of a day, and I probably need to write that overview of builds from around the web, things that have excited me for this league. So I'm going to have a combination of things that are proven safe performers, that are risky but probably good performers, and then some spicy things that may just not work well at all. But I'll be very clear as to which category I put everything into, so that people can then make up their minds accordingly. Do I have time for the RAQ? I'll just have a quick look at the RAQ. That's a good point. Before I call this off, let's just go to the RAQ. Who's sending me a message here? Is this someone talking about my proposal for a summon Toucan Ray Zombie of Falling. Okay, recently asked questions. What do we got here? Penance Brand and Mark Effect, yes, it does scale. Penance Brand is potentially really broken. I expect it may be nerfed today. More details about the minion gems. There kind of wasn't enough. I did have a look at this. There's a couple of things that we knew about from it, but the Flame Golem of the Meteor, there's not enough damage in this. It's fairly high. And the Empowered Chaos Aura deals 2.5 times the regular version, which only tickles, has a duration equal to its cooldown and 50% more AoE. It applies withered once per second to enemies in the storm. I don't think that's good enough. And maximum 3 golems is specific to that instance of the skill. So, for example, if you have both a normal stone golem and an ice golem of hordes socketed, you could have 3 ice golems summoned, or 2 ice golems and 1 stone golem, but not 3 stone golems. This is really interesting here. So, definitely consider this. This is an intriguing line at this point. How about details of the Warlord's Penance Mark skill? Once per second summons 3 phantasms. They're regular enemies and will fight you while I live, but expire after a few seconds. They grant flask charges and Vile Souls when slain, but don't drop loot or leave corpses. There's going to be a whole bunch of broken stuff there. Numbers for Warden of the Magi's Bark Skin skill. So this is 25% reservation. Its effects are gain 1 bark per second if you haven't been hit recently, lose 1 when hit, 15% increased armor per bark. Maximum 10 barks, so that can be 150%, which is quite a lot. Minus 15 physical damage per from attack hits per bark. 2% more chance to evade attacks per bark below maximum. So the more times that you get hit, the better you're going to go there. Yeah, Penance Mark is going to have to get re-looked at, I think. It's just broken. How does Dark Effigy from the Warlock of the Mist do? Create a Dark Effigy tethered to you. Damage you take from enemy hits is taken from the effigy's life before yours, and 200% of damage that the effigy takes from enemy hits is taken from your life before its own. That's that's really complex. So okay, you've got to just make sure that the effigy doesn't get hit. This could be really strong, but very high skill cap to use well. Oh, they answered this. Excellent. Lightning Strike of Arcing causes projectiles to deal 10% more damage for each time the projectile has chained. This stat will be reworded to be less ambiguous. So that's Lightning Strike of Arcing for you. It's one of the weaker interpretations of it, and it's definitely needs a rework because it is a mess. And that's it. So only one of my questions got answered. That was the Lightning Strike of Arcing. And the rest of them are just other people's questions, but good ones. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that is interesting, but I do kind of want to call it because I think I need to get some sleep. Or not sleep yet, but I need to start writing a thing and then get some sleep. So thank you all for tuning in. I am going to leave it there and say, may your Varlorbs have interesting results.